All right, pleased to be joined at this time by Coach Kevin Saunders, the head football coach at Gilmer High School in Ellijay, Georgia. Coach, thanks for joining me.
I'm glad to be here and see that I'm glad you got something going on with football for a change there, Parker.
Yeah, full disclosure, me and Coach Saunders are friends and not too far from each other. But Coach, people that don't know you, because this topic is really exciting to me because I've done this a couple of times. You are in the process of doing this now, the topic of fixing a struggling program, and you've done it several places. So pretend like you don't know me and tell anybody listening to this now about what all you've done, how you got to where you are now.
Well, I've been fortunate to have been fairly successful everywhere I've been. So I started off coaching in Virginia, coached there for a long time, won a state championship, played for a couple, and taking over programs have just been terrible. And usually the programs that are bad are awful. So I moved from Virginia, come down here and take one of the worst jobs probably in Georgia. I started off at Cross Keys and DeKalb, and that was a story in itself, but we were fortunate enough to win some games there. And then I get hired at Pebblebrook. And there from Pebblebrook, I come to Gilmer. And all these schools that are usually I've taken over haven't been very good. So the thing is, usually if it's a good job, it's not open.
Right.
So before I got to Pebblebrook, they were 2-18, and we finished going to playoffs 3 years in a row. I was there 4 years, made it last 3 years, won a bunch of games, and then come to Gilmer, and they had the state's longest losing streak at 30 or 31 straight games, and you attributed to quite a few of those, Parker. And we go 4-6 this year, and other than the first game, we had a chance to win every game the whole year. And,
I can attest that Coach did. Yeah, he took over the team. A team with the state's longest losing streak. Probably, I know they went 0-10 3 years in a row. I don't know how many games it was.
Yeah, but it was 30 or 31, something like that.
And they went 4-6 this year, and the kids played hard, and it was just 4-6 is not a horrible record ever, but it's some years just okay. But based on the expectations of what you had, I thought y'all did an unbelievable job, Coach, and that's one of the reasons I sought you out to talk about this topic.
Yeah, that's no problem. Our kids, when you take over a program that's really bad, and I think you got to research the job before you go in it and take it. And like I said before, usually if it's a really good job, those jobs aren't open very often.
Right.
So most coaches have to take over a poor job. So when you take over a poor job, there's things you got to look for in that, in taking that job, and you got to see what type of school it is, what the tradition they have, whether it's a football school, basketball school, baseball school. Have they won in the past? Can they win in the future? You got to answer those things when you go in there and interview and do your research before you go in there.
Absolutely. So let's say you take the job, Coach. You do your research. You decide you want the job. They decide they want you. You take the job. We kind of put up there, and I kind of studied this and came up with this little PowerPoint that I'm showing here. But focus on 5 things to focus on. And the first one was focus on relationships over everything, meaning you're taking over a team, in your case, with 30 straight losses. You got to sell these people on, I got this. What did you guys do, not just at Gilmer, but in Virginia? I know y'all won a state championship in Virginia, a place that wasn't good before. What are some things you've done over the years to focus on relationships when you take over that struggling team?
Well, first thing, I think every coach needs to know that you got to be genuine and be yourself, because kids see through the BS. I don't think everybody gets in there and they do all sorts of things. And I think you get all these coaches in here and they get all these mantras and different sayings and that kind of thing. You just got to be yourself, and that way the kids understand who you are. So you go in there, and some of the things that have been fortunate for me is now everybody's got internet and social media and stuff, is you can Google me and find out I've been successful where I've been before.
Right.
a majority of kids do those things. So that's the main thing. But when you go in there, you got to sell your kids on yourself, and you got to be sincere with them. And they're not going to believe in you and understand your relationship until the time hits that they need it. And they got to understand it. And by that, I mean, you're around them, all right? And then all they're going to see is you, but they got to see the genuine you. So when you're around them, you have to be honest, you have to be upfront, and you have to give them a bit of yourself in there. They have to see how hard you're working also. And you have to be visible to these kids all the time.
Yeah, I think being yourself is the best advice. So simple, but so many people go in there with this fake attitude or this fake mantra or this fake, they kind of fool people into trying to get a job. And you just don't want that. You want somebody that wants you. And so you got, and you're good at this, you be yourself, you know.
No doubt, because you get in there, the kids can see through BS. I've always been taught by older coaches and stuff that, you know, you can't BS a kid. For some, you know, they get older, you can, but when they're young, they can see through it for some reason, and how they do it, I don't really understand how they do it, but they do. They can feel it and those kind of things.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You got to.
Yeah, I think the relationships you build, and by relationships I mean players, coaches, administrators, community. You got to build relationships with all those people. They got to trust you. If you don't have that one, these other four things are useless, to be honest.
Oh, I agree. Like, and you got to go out, you got to work these things. And I did a presentation on this stuff before, and I had 6 things, but they could probably been put down there just like you did. You got to work the community. Like, for example, every Friday I go to a restaurant here in town, and it's Mike's Restaurant. I eat with the old coaches and some of the old timers in town every day at lunch. And we just sit around and talk, and they give me the history of the school. They tell me what's going on in the community. I know things that are going on, and then I can be more involved as a person. Also, I believe the football coach, and if they're any good, they got to take ownership of the whole program, and that's K through 12. I mean, that's middle school, elementary school, everything. And you got to be visible to those people, and you got to be visible to those parents, and you got to be visible to those kids.
I think sometimes people mistake catering or something like that to relationship. Meaning, we're not saying that you have to give in on stuff. You have to cater to everybody else. What we're saying is build a relationship with that person. And when you have a relationship with somebody, you can actually tell them something they don't want to hear. If I got a good relationship with the basketball coach, I can tell him something he doesn't want to hear, and vice versa. But if we didn't build that relationship over time, it's not going to matter. I mean,
exactly.
So the next thing I thought, Coach, and to me, this is kind of the most important one in focusing your mindset, because relationships is obviously the most important one. But the next thing I thought, and I'm only putting my personal experiences on this one, is focus on what you have and not what you don't. So you can see a school. I went to Chapel Hill High School. They were horrible. They won 15 games in 10 years. And everybody said, well, they don't have a good setup for the middle school. They got no money. The administration, they give all the stuff to this and this and this. And all that was true. All that was true, guys. It was true. It wasn't that. But they won the state championship in track nearly every year. They were always really good at basketball. So instead, when I got there, the advice I got from some of the people I trusted was this exact phrase, and I've taken it with me ever since, to use what you had. Like, instead of worrying about that locker room we had to share with soccer that was irritating, I had to worry about that I had all these good track athletes, and I had to find a way to put them in there, And so you got to focus on what you have. It's the same thing. It's all about how you see it. And so what have you guys done at the place you've been to focus on what you have and not what you don't have?
Well, it goes back to the one saying and the thing that I always go by: you don't have problems, you have solutions. All right. So that's my whole thing is if we don't have it, we're going to work at it to get it. And that's the main thing. And my whole thing with the way I've taught my teams and stuff is, for example, like at Pebblebrook, we didn't have what McEachern and North Cobb and those schools had. So we played with a chip on our shoulder about it. So we took what we did have and we made it in what was really good. We had a big weight room. We had 17 power racks in there, and we made that weight room work. and it did. It was like a dungeon. The kids called it the hole. And then they started changing things, to the pit and the rock now where we play, because people did not like coming to Pebblebrook and playing. They just don't like it. It's not a great place to play, I'll be honest with you, but we used it in our advantage. And so you have to change those things. When I was at William Campbell, and we were rough. We're a small school in the state of Virginia playing 2A football, and we were really, really good. And we were playing Bob Christmas's team. He coached in Virginia at that time. And we made a tunnel that those kids had to walk through to get to our field of our fans from their locker, because their place was further away from ours, and they had to walk down there to it. We didn't have the nicest of fields and that kind of thing. And that was our thing that we hung our hat on. Is all right, so we don't have the nicest things. You got to come down here and play, and that's just too bad. And we're going to use that to our advantage. I think that any problem you have, you just got to make solutions, and that's what we tell our kids all the time. We don't have the best athletes, all right. So what do you got to do if you don't have the best athletes? You got to make something work. So instead of being a spread guy, you might have to be a wishbone guy. Whatever you got to do. And I think some coaches come out and they want to show you as much as they know instead of take what you got and use it. And I think you got to learn how to take a round peg and put in a round hole instead of forcing a square peg in a round hole. And I think that's how I've been fortunate enough to be successful doing that. And the other thing is, you got to sell these kids on yourself and themselves. You might have a kid that thinks he's a quarterback, but he might be better as a tight end. So you got to sell that kid on the fact you're going to be able to contribute to this team by playing tight end instead of quarterback.
And you sell them by having a good relationship with them.
Yes.
And so it goes back to the same thing we're saying.
Exactly. And you just got to say, hey, if you want to play, this is where you're going to play. And I do think that a coach has to go in and you got to have dynamics in the coaching staff of who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, who's the rah-rah guy, who's not the rah-rah guy. Every coach has to understand his role just like his players. And when you're taking over a program, you have to establish that with your staff. And they got to buy them. They got to buy what you're selling also.
Absolutely. I love that, Coach. That was great, because what you talked about was exactly what I was meant by that. You take something that's negative at your school, or people have said is negative, and you turn it into a positive for your team. That's something you have to do. You only have what you have. Remember, we're talking about fixing a struggling program, so I assume the teams that won the state championship aren't listening to this. This is a
Probably
place
not.
that's been winning. If you've been losing, there are some things there that are causing you to lose. It's not that the old coaches were stupid or they didn't know. It's not always that. It just wasn't working out. And how are you going to change it? You're going to have to turn those negatives into positives. So the next thing is kind of along that same line is I put focus on the present and not the past. And I think that's a two-part comment. One is it doesn't do a lot of good to tell them how bad they used to be. We just focus on this. But also there has to be a sense of urgency. And if you were 0-10 for 3 years, there probably wasn't a sense of urgency. So how did you guys build a sense of urgency to focus on right now and not worry about what the last team or the 3 teams ago or any of that?
Well, the first thing I always do is I get in there, and I had the team meeting with the kids before I did anything else. And like at Gilmer, I had a team meeting with them, and I told them, and I do use the past as a little bit of some things. And I got in there and said, guys, y'all sucked in the past, and you've sucked for 3 years in a row. And I'm sorry, that's the only way to describe it, because y'all were god awful. And then I said, and those days are over from here on out. And I want you to understand that I didn't take this job to come up here and get my ass kicked. That just isn't going to happen. If we get beat, the better team's going to win. And we'll walk off field knowing the best we did the best we could, and the better team wins. And the majority of the time, I felt like this year that happened majority of the time. The other thing is, I told somebody a long time ago to make a bush grow, sometimes you got to prune those branches. Mm-hmm. And so every now and then you got to get rid of kids, and I hate doing it. It's one of the worst things in the world there is, but sometimes for the better good of the team, you got to get rid of the cancers that are around there. And you'd be surprised that a cancer in a locker room can contribute to you losing. And I truly believe that, and I've always believed that.
No,
and you got to
yeah.
cut. You always got to cut the cancer out. If you want it to grow and flourish, you got to cut that out. And this year we only had 5 seniors on the football team, and we worked. When I got the job, we started working from day one. They had to understand the difference of what they were doing, and I truly believe that everybody believes the way they do things is the right way. When that's great as coaches, but you have to learn how to do everything efficiently and effectively in practice. And I truly believe that you just go at it and go as fast as you can. You got to preach a sense of urgency. You want to win. There's not a coach that takes a job, and there's not a player that goes out there with a purpose of trying to lose. Everybody wants to win. All right. And you have to build on that. If those kids say they want to win, you as a winner have to show them what it means. And that's what we talk about. We're going to do what winners do. And winners work hard no matter what it is. You got a terrible weight room. You've got a terrible field. You got terrible equipment. Too bad. Quit whining about it. Be a man and suck it up, and you go out and do your business. And you build on that. And you got to teach those kids that's something that you put in, that we're going to get this job done no matter what. And then that's what we teach our kids from day one that we do.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. I remember one of the first things you did when you got Gilmer, and I saw maybe it was an interview, or I don't even remember where it was, but somebody asked you something like, well, how about this team coming off of 0 and whatever? And you said, no, you stopped and said, no, we're 0-0.
We're 0-0.
I don't know about all that other stuff. So
I don't either. And then, like the year we won a
I
state
thought that was great. Yeah.
Yeah, we come back to next year after one state championship and say, guys, y'all haven't won anything. Y'all are 0-0. You're on the same boat as everybody you're playing. And we told those kids that from day one there at Gilmer. I said, you're no different than everybody else. Between when I got the job, you got the same record as Cartersville. You're 0-0. You're no different right now in Cartersville. You're no different Pickens. You're no different than Colquitt. You are 0-0. And that's all you got to know. And you go from there.
And they are this year too, I mean,
Correct.
coming out, you're not going to get any extra points put on that scoreboard because you had a good year last year.
Correct.
You're going to have to start 0-0 again. And I just think that is what we mean when we say focus on the present and not
Correct.
the past. It doesn't mean we don't bring up the past, but it's not a focus. There's a difference between a focus and something that happens. I mean, things are going to happen. Now, the next thing is about rules. And I'm always curious to hear people that have turned programs around answer this question. What did you think were some of the rules that you put in immediately that were the most effective? What was a different rule you did than what they did before that you thought was effective, not just at Gilmer, but wherever?
I will say one thing I've never done, and I learned this from an old coach one time. There's two things, and I'm big on talking to older coaches, and I'm a dinosaur. I'm probably different than most of the coaches nowadays.
Yeah, you are, Coach. You're kind of pushing old now.
Yeah, I'm old. I'm old as dirt, and but we're going to do things this way here. I don't put rules in writing. I tell them in there, and I found out why. I used to have a rule: if you don't come to practice, you don't play. Well, there's always that circumstance that comes up that you back yourself in a corner if you do those things. Well, he didn't come to practice. Well, there was a death in the family. I mean, there's all sorts of things that I've had to deal with, kids being arrested, parents being arrested, all sorts of things that, don't happen. So if you put rules in there where they can see them, I think you paint yourself in a corner, and I don't think you should do that.
Yeah, we always had rules. It's got to be a rule you can enforce, Coach.
Correct.
That's the thing. Like if you're gonna, like, we would put a rule out that said do right, be where you're supposed to be. Well, that's so damn arbitrary that we can apply that to anything probably.
Yes.
But everything you did, we could say where you're doing right, where you're supposed to be. And I didn't mean to cut you off on that, but I just mean if you're gonna put a rule in there, make sure you can enforce it. Don't put a rule in writing you're not gonna enforce.
If you have rules, you have to enforce them. So you got to do that. So my thing was, the first thing they needed to understand there at Gilmer is, you don't miss practice for any reason. 2 is, if you're not going to be at practice, you have to call me or text me, and it's still not an excuse. And 3 is, you're never late. All right. We start with those 3, and then the rest usually takes care of itself.
Absolutely.
I'm very particular. I'm very particular to detail. They have to hang their helmets and their equipment a certain way in the locker room. They can't leave anything dirty. But those are things that are told to them. We don't write them down, and we don't put them in there. So if it happens, we address it. We take care of it. I'm also this guy that says, all right, your best player gets in trouble. You don't play him on Friday night. Now, if you ask me a question, who are you hurting more, the kid or the team? You got to ask yourself which one you're doing the worst to. If the best player doesn't play, does that give you the rest of the kids on the team not a chance to win? Then you're putting another kid in a spot that he's supposed to be able to play in, and he might not be able to get it done. So you have to address those issues as a coach. My thing is, I have not played the kid, but I've had coaches, and instead of punishing the team that way, he took care of punishing the kid before the game or something like that. And I think sometimes you as a coach, you're better off taking care of things in practice, do it yourself. And then on Friday, nobody has to ask you why your best player didn't play. Because to me, that's putting that kid in a bad spot. And I know at times you have to do it, but you got to remember you're there for the kids. And that's the thing, you got to defend them. And I found out if you take care of those kids that way, you'd be surprised how hard they'll play for you.
Yeah, I agree, Coach. I mean, for the most part, I never thrown a kid off the team. I gave them a ton of stuff they couldn't hardly accomplish, if that makes sense. Like I gave them a list of so many things they'd have had to do to stay on the team that they chose to quit. Or I would have seen them do it. If they'd have done it, I'd have been proud of them and let them back on. But I like to give kids choices. I tried not to affect playing time because my rule on playing time always was we're going to play the best ones, not the ones I like. Hell, some guys didn't play a bit, and I loved the kid. We didn't play the ones we liked. We played the best ones. So if they were the best ones, then they were the best ones. And then if they got in trouble, I made their lives absolutely miserable. Except for that 3 hours on Friday, because that's me and you are on the same page with that. Now, that also doesn't mean that other people not doing that are wrong. So if you hear that, get all offended. But I think you got to be you. That goes back to the first thing, Coach.
Yeah,
you got to be you. And that's me. That's just me. I'm going to do that. So,
and there's 20 ways to skin a cat. And I mean, and people, and I don't think some's the right way and the wrong way, but nowadays you got to understand, when I first started coaching, you didn't have earrings, you didn't have long hair, you didn't have things like that, and you just didn't do it. But nowadays, I've gotten soft, and they can have long hair and earrings and things, and I don't mind.
When you going to get some long hair and earrings?
My hair is growing now is a problem, and I'm probably going to end up with long hair because I ain't going to the barber till it's time to go. But my teams have to do the little things, like everything straight in the locker room. Everybody has to have black cleats. I don't let them I don't let them not have matching cleats. They have to have the same socks. And I know some ways that gets on these kids and their individuality and all that. But football's not an individual sport, and that's
my pitch on that was always, if you care about socks, then you care about socks. That's great. But I would not put, and I'm telling for other coaches out there trying to change your program, I would not put socks and missing practice in the same boat. I'd pick these rules where that I could enforce. And so, like you said, you came in with those 2 or 3 simple things, and you focus on that. The rest of that stuff's procedural, and of course,
it takes care of itself.
Yeah. Focus on our plan, Coach. This is the last thing of these things to talk about. And it just, to me, when you interview for a job, the place is struggling. Our pitch, when we talk about getting a head job, which is a whole nother one of these, I go on a tangent about they're not giving you a head job at these really good places. If you just be honest with yourself, it's very likely you're going to get promoted where you are, or you're going to take over a struggling program. So you went and talked the principal into hiring you. You went in there and you had to have your plan. This is my vision. This is Kevin Saunders' plan, Kevin Saunders' vision, that's what the interview's about. But the minute they offer you that job and you accept it, it's got to turn into our plan. Now it's got to be Gilmer High School's plan. They've got to believe in that vision. The administration's got to support you. The parents got to support you. The kids got to believe in it. So tell us something you would do to turn your plan into our plan.
Well, the easiest way to do that is you got to get people to contribute, to feel like they're contributing to the plan. And by that, I mean, you go up to the principal and say, I need to hire this person right here. See what you can do. See if you can make this work. This person would fit really good on our staff. All right. Then you can go to things like in the community, or the one things we did was we had to get a new weight room there at Gilmer. Ours was small. We had good equipment, but it's very small. So what I did is I sat with superintendent principal and said, how can we come up with something that we have here at the school that we could turn into a weight room? Well, sure enough, they went and got the place to turn it in, to find us the weight room. And they did. It's huge. And we've got it going. Now, next was we needed to outfit that weight room. So we go and I talked to a few people in the community, and next thing I know, they're contributing. So now you got people putting pots, irons in the fire, but there's only one person stirring that fire. And that's me. And I that's awful to say, but you got to make sure that if it's your plan, it's your job. Not any of these people are going to get fired other than you, because what you do on Friday night. So
Sure.
But you got to make them feel like they're putting their stuff in it and they're being a part of your plan and they are contributing. And if you do that, it's like I've always said, you're going to get more flies with honey. So you get more people feel like they're helping you, and they are helping you. And sure enough, you get more and more people involved, and everybody, next thing you know, everybody's believing in what you're doing.
Absolutely, coach. And all those things are intertwined, the relationships, the focusing
Correct.
on what you have, and all that stuff's intertwined with making that your plan. So you come up with this plan. Now you've gotten a job. You came up with this plan. It's becoming your plan. This is a slide I love to show, and I don't even have a question so much as just a comment from you as you see it. It says, if you're executing your plan, and I actually put this out today on Twitter, these are 4 things that I think you've got to constantly tell yourself, especially if your program's been struggling. One, and number one on purpose, don't get your feelings hurt. Golly, people get their feelings hurt so easy around nowadays.
Everybody's really, I think,
Somebody probably listened to me and you talk today and got their feelings hurt. Like
yes,
when they're not these guys in here live, but the guys on
yeah,
the re-record. But don't get your feelings hurt. Just listen and try to get better. Execute your plan regardless of the hurdles. Don't let the principal come to you and say, hey, we can't hire so-and-so. And you really can't, and you're frustrated by it. But that can't derail the whole plan. You just got to regroup and go to the next thing. I think the key thing is your plan can change. It is okay. You could go into the job saying, we're going to do X, Y, or Z. And then once you really get a year or two into it, maybe that was fine for then, but now we need to go do it this way. Because I think people get hard-headed on that too. And then never, ever quit on it. Never quit on it. Just keep building and working on your vision and your plan. So if you're executing a plan, really that could be a bank, a football team, anything you're doing. Those are 4 things I really believe in that you got to keep dear to you in the middle of that. So I don't have a great question off of that, but just maybe any kind of comments you get as you hear me say that.
All right. Well, I'll give you some examples. My reputation as a defensive coach. I spent time at Virginia Tech with Bud Foster, and I've run the 4-2-5 back when, it was just a 4-man front, and that's all they called it, even front. I was a 4-2-5 guy forever. Ran it at Pebblebrook, and we were outstanding at it. We really were. At Gretna, where we won state championship, we ran it and was outstanding at it. I also went to Gretna and took over a team that had won 4 state championships before I got there. And they were a spread team. I'm a wing T guy. I don't go in and cut my nose off, spike my face. We kept the spread in. We ran wing T stuff out of the spread. And we went to 2 more state championships, won another one, and won a bunch of games there. I took over at Pebblebrook, and we had all these athletes. Well, we start off in a wing T because I needed to change their mindset of becoming a more physical football team. And that first year I knew we were just going to, get hammered, but we went into wing T and we stayed under center and did it. But the next year I knew we had a kid that could throw it. So I got me a spread guy in there to run the offense. And sure enough, we ran spread the rest of the time and we're very good at it. But we also changed the mindset doing that. Here at Gilmer, I could not run my 4.25. Don't have the athletes to do it. So I made some adjustments, and now we're a 3-4 team. We're a wing T, under center team, which fits the kids that we do. And the plan, like you said, is I think is you have a plan. You go in there with your plan, but you have to be able to adapt to what you have. And that goes back to my thing that I always say, you don't have problems, you got solutions. If you don't have a quarterback, then get under center and hand the ball off. You have to give your program the best opportunity to win. So you have to put your pride and your ego away a lot of the times. And like I said, you can't get your feelings hurt. And that means you can't even hurt your own feelings. So
That's right.
you got to do what's best for your program. And I think at times coaches won't do that. I mean, I've had to get rid of a guy that was a dear friend of mine, and you know him also. He's coaching with me in Virginia, and he did a great job. Then all of a sudden he was doing a terrible job. He was having a terrible situation at home, but I had to do what's best for the program, and I had to get rid of him. And you know, and it wasn't personal, but it was what was in the best interest of the program. And being a head coach, you have to make those decisions. I mean, and the other thing I try to tell all these other coaches is, if you want everybody to like you, then you're not doing a very good job. Not everybody's going to like what you do. And
Nick
if
Saban said, if you want everybody to like you,
sell ice cream.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that. You know, I've always believed that. So it is what it is.
No, I love this slide so much because here's what I see. And I was fortunate to do this twice, fixed struggling program. You've done it more than that. Most of the time somebody gets a job, they got this head coaching job, they're really excited about it, they're eager, they're going to turn it around, they're the guy, and then something gets in the way. And then it's like they throw their hands up like, this place don't want to win, you know, and they're done. That is not what we've been able – if you've been successful at fixing a struggling program, you probably don't know all the times you could have gotten your feelings hurt. You had to change your plan. You had hurdles get thrown out in front of you, and you still overcame those things and won. We went undefeated and won the region championship at Pickens, not because I got there and they did everything I said. It was actually we went from bad to good because of a million reasons, to be honest. But some of them were not going our way. You know, I had times I could have gotten my feelings hurt. I had times they threw hurdles out in front of us. We had times I said something and then I had to go do the opposite because I said, you know what, like you said with your offense, the plans had to change. But if you ever quit on it, you're going to be exactly right. So if you throw your hands up and say, this place doesn't want to win, you're exactly right. Yeah, you're exactly right. But if you kind of keep pushing.
But then you're part of the problem.
You're part of the problem. You're just another guy that the next guy is going to fix the program, and you know it's going to be your guy. So I you know, my advice to guys listening to this is, even if it's your 4th year or 5th year at whatever place, so what? As long as they keep paying you every month, keep believing in that and keep pushing for these things. You know, it just nothing positive comes out of getting your feelings hurt, letting the hurdles get in the way, refusing to change your plan. Nothing. You still may not win. It is possible, but you will definitely not win if you don't embrace these things. And
no doubt.
Does anybody? I know we got some people. We got a decent number of people in here live. Is anybody got a question for Coach Saunders, or anything we can answer? Let's see if I can see the chat. Coach, we did such a good job covering it, they might not have had a question.
That's pretty good.
All jokes aside, between the two of us, we have covered this subject in real life
a bunch of times.
Coach Cannon asked about what are your priorities when you hire a staff? Like, what are you looking for when you're hiring an assistant coach?
Well, I think some of the things people don't understand is when you're building a program and stuff, the weight room is the number one place you got to build the program, because your program, most people only see it for 10 weeks. The kids see it year round. So you got to start in the weight room. And my priorities are always with hiring a weight guy first, whether it's myself or somebody, or like the guy I stole from you, Parker.
I quit. You didn't steal from me. Now, hold on.
No, he was. Yeah, you quit right there at that time.
I had already quit by then.
Yes, and he, you know, he's good. So that was the first thing you have to do. And I truly believe that when you hire a staff, you got to have your weight room guy. Your next best coach has to be your middle school coach or your youth, right there in the middle school. He has to be good at what you do. In the past, Gilmer's middle school program has been terrible and has not helped us in the past. And the staff they have there at the middle school now with Willie Dodaro is excellent. And they get there and they do an incredible job. And then next, your offensive line coach has to be outstanding. So to me, you hire those three spots and then you build around that. And the other thing is you got to make sure they're loyal. Do not have anybody that is not loyal. And that's just the way it is.
Coach, we got them coming in now. Next question was, what's a good way to increase numbers in the program? And there's an easy answer to that. You got to win. Kids want to be.
You got to win.
So you got to do whatever you got to do to win.
You got to go out and beat the bushes, and you got to tell. And here's one thing I think that some coaches don't do enough of. You got to go in there and tell them, you got a chance to play. You got a chance to play. I'm not guaranteeing you a chance, but I'm going to give you a chance to play. If you come in and you beat out the guy that started, and you do everything, you're in the weight room, you beat out the guy that started, then you're going to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question. What are your suggestions for handling shifts in administration and administrative support? I can answer that one. You can take it, but Lord knows I had like 6 principals in 5 years at Pickens or something. But go ahead and answer that one, Coach.
I was fortunate. I got hired by, I'll give you an example, Pebblebrook. I got hired by a principal, and then they left. They retired and got hired by an athletic director there at Pebblebrook, and they got moved to a different school as a different administrator. So I had a different principal who didn't hire me, and then I had I had 3 ADs in the 4 years I was there. Two of the ADs were very good, and that's why they didn't stay at Pebblebrook very long, and they were gone. I think that here's my thing: if they come in and they don't see eye to eye with you, and you got to remember they did not hire you, then I'm the guy that says, well, then I'm not going to beat my head against the wall here to do this. And that's throwing your hands up and quitting, but that's an administration that didn't hire you. And I don't know how well sometimes people work that did not hire you.
Yeah, it can be. I can see it both ways on that.
Yes.
You know, I was at Pickens, and I was the more established one, if that made sense. The principal kept changing, and I was the one that was there. So we didn't have a ton of issues. But I'll tell you what I always believed was I was going to be as kind and as nice and as supportive and as understanding as I could be to the administration.
Correct.
Until it involved them telling me who should coach, where
Yes.
they should coach, who should play, where they should play. And I was fortunate now in all my years as a head coach, I never had to quit because of this. But I was prepared that I thought it was their job to hire me, and they had every right to fire me. And I was going to be as nice as I could be to them until it involved who coached what and who played what. If they told me either one of those things, then I thought it was time to go. And if you ever hear history of people and telling stories, if somebody comes to you and says, the principal comes to you or the AD and they say, hey, Coach, we really want you to hire John Smith here from Michigan. John, we need John to be your offensive coordinator. You know, I think that'd really help y'all out. You know, you might want to tell them that John can be the head coach if he wants. That's my opinion. You know, if they come to you with anything else, if they say, hey, Coach, we need you to teach third period. We need you to do this lunchroom. We need you to, you know, help the basketball team by doing this 2 or 3 things. You got to suck it up and look at it from their perspective and say, yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. If you can do that, usually the principal will understand that, because I got to a point where I was so established versus the principal sometimes that I would have this talk with the principal. I would say, look, I promise I will be here at 2 a.m. I will do anything in the world for this school, but you cannot tell me who to coach or play. As long as you don't do them 2 things, I'll do everything else for you. And we always had that relationship. Now, I may have gotten lucky because I know some other people didn't.
I didn't get lucky right there at the end. At the end there at Pebblebrook, the principal told me, well, you need to put this team on the schedule. You need to put this team on the schedule. And I'm like, well, we can't compete with that team. But then the next thing is, well, we can make a lot of money playing them. Then to me, we're not in the same view of what a football program is supposed to be. We're not putting our kids in the best situation to be successful. They're thinking about other things. And then that's when I said, and then we're not going to do this.
Well, I think that it's their job to hire you. And unfortunately, you got to realize it's their job to fire you.
There's no
It's not
doubt.
their job to tell you what to do, which I know is a
Correct.
weird dynamic, but they get treated that way by the superintendent. Those of you that know me know I'm at the district office now. I don't coach. I work for the superintendent, but it works the same way there. The superintendent hires the principal. We don't tell them exactly what to do. The principal does a great job. We either bring them back or we don't. But it's the principal's job to make all those day-to-day decisions. And I think the head coach needs to be treated the same way. When I was the AD, I wanted the coach to make all the decisions, and we just hired or fired the coach. You know, I mean, it was there. And so I would expect that of my people to answer that question. I hope that made sense. You got one more question, Coach, and then if there's more, keep asking them. But we got one more we hadn't answered. Coach had a question about Pebblebrook specifically. It says, how did you deal with academics and discipline? How do you fix a struggling culture within the school?
All right. Well, at Pebblebrook, you got to remember at one time they had been successful and they had good football programs in the past. They've always had great players. I went in and I was fortunate enough, my staff and me believed in it. They want to play. Kids want to play. So what you got to do is you got to take that away from them. And we did. If they weren't passing or getting in trouble in school, they had to deal with me discipline-wise. And I was the heavy hand at discipline at Pebblebrook. We didn't allow them to sag their pants. We didn't allow them to wear slides to school. And we told them, if you want to play, you're not going to do those things. And I stuck by my guns with that. I stuck by my guns. If you miss practice, I get rid of you. And I did. I had to prune the bush down there quite a bit. We went from about 50 kids to JV and varsity combined. My first year, we were 100 starting the second year. And we doubled that with the kids coming out in the building. The thing was that they understood after my first year that I don't play. And that's exactly what they would say. This coach doesn't play. So if they were getting a bad grade in the class, the teachers would tell me. If they were being a discipline problem in the class, teachers would tell me. I sat down with every kid every year and told them this is the way it's going to be. If you're going to be a problem in the classroom, if you're going to be a discipline problem or an academic problem, we're just going to get rid of it because we're not going to sit here and deal with that. Because I truly believe every kid can pass classes if they just turn in their work. I mean, I don't know a teacher to this day that goes out to fail a kid. So you got to go ahead and just try and do your work. And then, I handled the football situation. The rest of the school was on the principal's deal. And we weren't, in my second year, when we got a new principal there at Pebblebrook, we did not quite see eye to eye on the discipline part of discipline kids. And that was another issue I had. I mean, my kids weren't going to act a certain way in school. And I didn't let them do it. And once we did that, the kids bought into it and they just felt different than everybody else. They felt like they were doing things the right way. And it was showing on the field. We didn't get stupid 15-yard penalties. We didn't act stupid. Our kids played hard, played the right way, and we won games. And we had a chance to win a lot of games. And we got to the playoffs, which they hadn't done. We tied for a region championship there. I mean, there were things that they hadn't done before then. We got to host a playoff game, which they hadn't done in forever. And Colquitt County had to come up to Pebblebrook and play. And, that was unheard of, really. And these kids bought into it. But you can't give in to them. You got to say, this is the way it's going to be. You got to do it. You hold all the cards as a coach. Kids want to play. So if they want to play, they have to do X, Y, and Z. And then if they don't, then they don't play.
Yeah, exactly, Coach. I couldn't agree more. I think the tougher the situation you're in for that, the more important it is to stick to your guns. And truthfully, it may get you fired. It very well may. Right. But I got news for you. You was getting fired anyway if you didn't. You can't let them kids run wild. There has to be we're going to do it this way, even if we have to dismiss a couple of kids, yes, especially in that infant stage of trying to fix the program.
Right.
You have to take a couple steps back to take some steps forward. You just may have to.
You just can't give in. You can't. If you know the right way and you believe it, then you know the right way. And if they don't believe it, then shame on them. Yeah. Because I truly believe that you got to do things the right way, and they got to come to class. They got to pay attention. They got to do their work. And we did. We checked on them every day. They had turned in grade sheets once a week. Once they got put on a certain thing, if we made them do. They did not like doing field roles during this, and we did this during the school year. I mean, we stayed on them the entire year, not just during football season.
Absolutely.
I was on them like, just a thumb was on them all the time, knowing what they were doing.
And you know what's interesting, Coach? Once the most important thing of all that was you got to show people that you care. If kids know that you care, and it doesn't matter if their parents make $100 a year or $1 million a year and anything in between, if they know that you care, they will do with the things you ask them to do. Now, sometimes coaches want to put that in the wrong order. They want you guys start doing what I tell you to, and then I'll start caring about you. It doesn't work like that. You're going to have to care first. But once some of my, I got to be careful how I say this, but some of my most memorable, enjoyable moments came at schools where we had to earn it a little bit. It was a little harder. You know what I mean? It just sometimes it was some of the guys who are loyal to me to this day are some of the guys that needed that structure the most.
No doubt. I still have a kid that off state championship team there at Gretna. I had to kick a kid off because he just didn't believe in coming to practice, and he was an all-state player. And to this day, he still talks to me about once a month, told me, his decision was one of the worst decisions he'd ever made. And I regret kicking him off. That's one of the worst things I've had to do, but he backed me into a corner, and it's just like me as a coach. If it like you got kids that play a bunch of sports, and I think these coaches say, well, you can only play my sport. You got to pick. Well, trust me, they're not going to pick the sport you want them to pick.
Right.
And that always happens. And, even there when I was at Pebblebrook, it was a basketball school. So I was smart enough to go in there, and we did this easiest thing in the world. Coach Washington said, I'll take them in June. You get them in July. I said, that's fine with me. I'll take the ones that don't play in the month of June. If they're playing basketball, I don't worry about it.
No, and that's what you have to do. You got to adjust to your school. You got to but the being fair and being consistent stuff, it's not like it's not always important. But if you go to Hoover or if you go to Colquitt County, maybe you got a little leeway. But if you're at a team that's been 0-10 several years in a row, I mean, what do you got to lose to stick to your guns on the, and so, just I think sometimes where you think it's the most difficult could actually turn out to be the easiest. As far as kids getting structure, once you get that ball rolling. So my advice to you guys listening, if you're at a place that struggles, just don't give up. Stick to your guns. Now you got to have that supportive administration. That's the piece that fits into that.
That is the biggest thing. I think anytime you take over a struggling school, you have to have supportive administration, or else you're not going to win. You won't win if you don't have the supportive administration.
Well, I think one thing that we can say for both of our teams in the mountains here, Pickens and Gilmer, who were in, similar situations.
Correct.
We took them over. I was just 8 years before coach. But when I got to Pickens, they were for real tired of losing, for real ready to do whatever I wanted to do. And I think the same could have been said for Gilmer. So timing is everything in some of this, getting that job when the principal really is ready to say, hey, whatever you guys want to do, let's try it. Let's try to get better. And so, all this ties together. But, Coach, it's a great discussion. I always appreciate talking to you. But some other people got to hear you. So I really, really appreciate your friendship. But really, I know in this topic, I really, really respect what you guys have done all the way going back to Virginia, where I know you did this many times there too. So appreciate you coming out with me a little bit. And we'll have you on another time about some other topic.
All right, that sounds good, Chris, and I appreciate this. And I'm glad you're doing something like this. I'm glad you're not coaching at Pickens anymore too. So that helps me. But
we'll edit that part out.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing this. This is good for coaches.
I appreciate it. It's been good to keep me involved, and I really love my job and I'm moving up at the central office type thing is a great role to be in. But I do miss sports and football, so this is great for me to have a chance to help. So if I can help any of you guys listening in any way, please let me know. And same can be said for Coach Saunders. Coach, tell them where you are on Twitter. You got a good Twitter
I don't even know my Twitter stuff. All I know is I'm on Twitter.
So type in Kevin Saunders. It'll come up.
It'll come up. Yeah, just type in Kevin Saunders. It'll come up. Mine's like 39964 or something.
You did the one they just suggested for you, the typical old man move. You just did the one they suggested.
The rest of that stuff. Yeah, get me on Twitter and you can hit me up that way, and that's what I usually listen to and go to and stuff, and I post a bunch of stuff on Twitter.
Yeah, all right, go follow Coach Saunders if you can. Appreciate you, Coach. Take care.
You too. Appreciate you.